Welcome to Sean's Thoughts. This is the third time I've restarted this because each time as I get into the full podcast, the wind starts to kick up. And interestingly enough, there wasn't any wind before I started recording this. So, welcome. I'm essentially just going to start regardless of this wind or not. This kind of essentially ties in with a lot of the different experiences that I've been experiencing lately. And yeah, so welcome to today's episode. Today we're going to talk about all the distortions and experiences that I'm currently going through and give you a few updates on different initiatives that I've been taking and different offerings that I'm creating. And so welcome. Oftentimes things don't work exactly the way we intend them, just like I don't imagine like sitting here the whole time with holding my hand to cover the wind, but yet I recognize that, it's kind of irritating to constantly watch audios where there's wind flapping in. And unfortunately, as you may or may not know from all of my podcasts, I'm essentially using or utilizing all of the tools that I am left with, that I have been permitted, or, they can't take away from me, because I've had so many different things that I've been unable to use, such as my Movavi video editor, because I could no longer continue to subscribe to it. Actually, recently, my podcasts have been removed from Apple, Spotify, and Audible simply because PayPal wouldn't, and the hosting platform wouldn't allow me to pay through PayPal without verifying that I had a real credit card. And what I mean by real, I mean a bank-issued credit card versus the prepaid credit cards that they allowed me to create the account with. But when I wanted to actually pay for it, they wouldn't allow me. And I don't necessarily know who that was, the reasoning for that did that. But nonetheless, because I was unable to pay with any other form than a credit card, they took my podcast down. So hopefully I'll have that resolved going forward. But yet each and every day that I step forward, there seems to be another thing, just like this wind. Like I said, there wasn't any wind before I sat down to do this recording, and now there's wind. So it's wondering, why? So I apologize if there is a lot of wind in this recording, but I'm essentially sick and tired of obstacles being placed in my way, but yet I feel that I'm being guided. And the only one that I would ever allow to guide me is God himself. And so, I do believe that I am doing, we'll call it God's work. In fact, yesterday I was sitting in my car, and within approximately a meter of where my car was placed, I had 2 deer walk up and start grazing on the blackberry bushes that were right outside my car window. And as I looked and watched them, they just looked up at me, saw me, and then just went back to doing what they were doing. And so it was a wonderful experience. And for me, it was validation or external confirmation that what I was doing was what I should be doing. And what I should be doing is what I am doing. So welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your time, regardless of whether or not the wind makes it into the microphone. And I apologize for the way my hand is having to be while I'm filming this. But it is what it is. And so let's get through today with what I want to share. And the first and foremost and most important thing is sharing my addition to Patreon that I essentially created today. And what this was is, a few weeks back ago, I had mentioned that I wanted to essentially commence with an initiative to create a mentor coaching session. And so that's kind of what I want to majorly highlight today, because for me, that's something super exciting. It's a way perhaps for me to essentially fund the way that I'm existing, that I want to demonstrate to everyone else that we can exist in this way, that we don't have to work by your traditional, slavery systems that we're stuck in. And many of us, a few billion, are definitely stuck in a slavery system. And so today I launched a new initiative on Patreon. I forgot what I titled it, but essentially I'm offering a mentorship program in a sense. as well as supporting myself through Patreon. See, Patreon is this amazing website, if you don't already know what it is, in which you can support other content creators, artists, musicians, and such by becoming one of their patrons. And that's where the whole Patreon name comes from. So you're able to find artists and, people that are wanting to express themselves artistically in a way that they've chosen. And you can essentially become part of their community and fund what they are essentially creating. And for me, if you don't already know, I have a channel called New Earth Creations. And, it's funny that the wind is even kicking up even more just as I start to get into what my channel is all about. You might hear me right now and be like, oh, he's just, thinking everything's a conspiracy. But yet, I'm a person who sees patterns, and I easily see the pattern. I see the pattern when certain things happen, but nonetheless, I could be a part in playing that. But let's get back to Patreon. So Patreon is a place that I've essentially platformed myself so that I can connect with people who love different types of art, but not just art through, digital art, but art through actual physical art and other different creations that I've created from meditative experiences and photography and videography, and even writing, composing articles, script writing. So many different ways that I've expressed myself creatively. And so I have a Patreon page where people can come together and support the creations that I'm creating. Now, you can support this just by joining for free, just by signing up to Patreon and, as I said, connecting your energy to my energy. And you can do this for free. But yet at the same time, there's other options, because when I was a kid, I had this idea of what could I do if I were to receive $1 from a million people? How could I become, helpful to the world? And that's essentially what I did on Patreon. Is my first tier, and it comes with different levels of support, is $1.11 United States currency. So if in Canada, you might see that as $2, depending on what the exchange rate is. But the whole idea is if you're in America or you're looking at the American site, you'll see $1.11. And the idea is that's 111. I like numbers that repeat. And so the idea is to see how many people in the world could contribute $1. And with that $1, what could I do in order to change at least my reality? And I have a lot of different plans proposed and such. And then I created later this other tier called the Founders Tier, and it is for $11.11 United States currency. Same idea, 1111. And it essentially allowed me to present those contributors who were going to contribute that amount with different digital downloads. So on that one, I included episode 1 of a TV series called Transmission, which I wrote along with my partner, Jim, and another video of my Care Bears, which is a 10-minute meditative experience, envisioning what the world could look like now, inspired by the nostalgic Care Bears of the 1980s. And today, I launched a third initiative that goes up from there at $111.11. And this particular one is allowing for the addition of all the benefits of those 2 former tiers, but a third one in which it allows for an 88-minute mentorship coaching experience once a month for all contributing members of that particular tier. See, I want to do it in such a way that I'm funding as well as supporting my YouTube channel, my Rumble channel. I want to get my podcasts back up on Audible, Amazon, Apple, Spotify, and all those places. I want to get that back up. I'd like to buy a new pair of shoes too, because the ones that I'm wearing, I've walked so much. But yet, I've created this so that I can start contributing to the healing process of whomever is called to join this contribution. And it doesn't necessarily have to be about me helping. It could just simply be, you asking questions perhaps about a video and that I've created, or we can do a TFT tapping session, or we can do a number of other things that you would choose to want to be a part of. And while this is a ongoing evolution of my creations, I'm offering, or I'm going to provide a worksheet to fill out prior to the session, in which it'll help clarify what we want to accomplish and, hopes, aspirations, and ideas of things that we could discuss and talk about. But basically what it's going to offer is one time per month, I will have a scheduled Zoom call in which you and I can talk about whatever it is that you desire to talk about. And my expertise or my experiences is pretty mammoth, I'll say. Like, think of woolly mammoth. Because I've studied a lot of different aspects of healing. I've learned about a lot of different things through my own research. I've traveled and backpacked across the world, and my own personal previous, even this experiences that I've had over the last 6 weeks, I've had a lot of time to learn and experience and enhance the aspects of my research to a far greater degree. So this session is going to essentially be under the guidance of, whatever it is that you're wanting to learn. Whether it's wanting to, as I said, learn about different healing modalities, or you just have questions over a part of something that I've said. I would even offer that, if you've had questions from the podcasts that I have recorded, maybe writing down those questions, and we can actually have a one-on-one conversation exploring, what I was perhaps meaning. I've often learned that life is like a game telephone, in which you sit down in a circle and one person says something to the person on their right, and then that whole conversation goes around from ear to ear to each person that's sitting there. And by the time it gets to the end, the message is considerably different. And even with communication between one-on-one, sometimes that can easily be misinterpreted. My own experience as being one of the best salespersons that the Brick, a Canadian company who sold electronics and furniture, had experienced myself. I would often explain things to the customer, and as they would relate back to me what they understood, oftentimes the information would be changed. Even in my own conversations with people I've met in my own life, sometimes we can hear different things than we expect, because first of all, we all have our own difference in filters and our different experiences, and filters and experiences can easily augment and often distort what the attempted communication is. And so even in my own conversations, I'll often say something and then get feedback a few minutes later, and how the person that received it is different than how I intended it to be spoken. And this isn't a wrong or right thing, it's just part of communication. So one of the things that I had learned from a former colleague of mine named Shone was to ask the phrase, does that make sense? And that's sometimes that's a technique that I wish to use a lot more, and yet I haven't used very much. So, I'll use it again. Does that make sense? It's an awesome way to slow down the conversation and to ensure that, the person that we're speaking to essentially repeats what we're said, so that we can see if what's been, transmitted and what's been received is the same thing. So that's something that I have recently launched just as of this morning. It's live on Patreon, so if you'd like to go there right now, and there's always a link in all of my YouTube videos, and often if you look into the Rumble videos down in the description, and when I get back on Apple, Audible, and Spotify, if you look into the description of those videos, you may or may not see a link, a hyperlink that you can click on to go directly to Patreon. But if you don't, you might actually see a link, and you may have to copy paste that link depending on the platform that you're in. But you can come over to Patreon and you can participate if you like. I've opened up 22 spots for that, and those are currently the limitation to what I'm wanting to invest my time in at the moment with the situation, the living situation that I'm currently involved in. And you might think that's very strange, of how do I offer coaching and mentorship when I'm in the situation that I'm in. However, this is kind of the life that I would choose to express myself in. Eventually, one day soon, I will have a base of operations, but yet I know part of the reason why I'm on the journey that I'm on right now is because I spent so much energy and attention onto talking about living this type of nomadic life that I am literally living the most of the life that I would choose to want to live. Being able to openly walk around, move through life, and experience truly living outside of the routine and programming that the system, the matrix, that corporations would choose us to live for their benefit and not necessarily ours. So you are definitely most welcome to explore. Like I said, even if you're not looking for mentorship right now, you can come over and you can support everything that I'm doing just by joining me on Patreon as a free member. And even if that part doesn't appeal to you just yet, subscribe, like, and comment on this channel, whichever platform you're watching from, because all of that helps. So if you feel like there could be a better world, I highly recommend that you invest in people like me as well as others who are essentially trying to imagine, pondering, discussing all of the different possibilities of how we could make our world better, because everyone has a say, and your say is essentially in how much are you willing to participate with those people around you that are choosing to do something different, such as me, such as all the other platforms of people out there that want to contribute to a better way of life and are simply tired of allowing the lesser of two evils to dominate the conversation. So yeah, that's what I've been doing. Actually, that's what I was doing this morning. I was also another announcement that turns into another conversation is I've discovered this other platform called Substack. And while I've heard about it before, I never actually utilized it. And then recently I found that another community member of mine on the UNN app, she had her own Substack page, and she was asking for people to share that article far and wide. And so immediately I jumped on, created an account with Substack, and subscribed to her. And then I started looking at the app myself, and I realized this was an app which essentially, it was an app to present articles that people had written. And so what I had and what I've done is on Substack, I've taken some of my podcasts and I've turned them into articles. See, I recognize that sometimes when I'm talking on this podcast that I have called Shone's Thoughts, that a lot of the words, or perhaps, my overall intention of what I want to say isn't fully realized, because we all learn differently. And that's the amazing thing about the Homo sapiens, is that we have different ways of learning in this reality that we find ourselves in. Some people, they learn by, reading. Some people learn by listening to audios. Some people learn by watching others do things and then essentially, building up their confidence that they can do that the same way. And then other people, they learn through a multitude or a varying degree of all of them. But yet the point is that we all have different ways of learning and different ways of essentially consuming and reflecting upon the different modalities of information out there. And so Substack is a wonderful medium in order to write and to present ideas through writing articles as opposed to posts or videos. And so I've started to publish a series of articles that are essentially derived from the podcasts that I have created already. And of course, on there, I've linked at the bottom of those those articles, I've linked the actual video themselves, because, you take an article or a video, you take a video which I've, spent hours composing or getting ready, and then at least sometimes between 30 minutes to an hour to actually record. And there's a lot of detailed information in there. And so these articles aren't going to have the full amount of information that's put in there. and they'll also lack the frequency of my voice and the delivery of how I deliver it, because, well, that's just the way things go. Sometimes when I'm creating a podcast, I will start off with the premise, and then I will put a whole bunch of supporting information, and I'll circle back to the original premise, as I did in many of the podcasts that I've done. But yet in an article, I might not have the space or the length to do that. Some of the articles are quite long, but nonetheless, it's an amazing platform which I have recently joined, and I encourage you to check it out. And I'll eventually make an article of this particular podcast as well. And yeah, so if you have the desire to do light reading, then join me on Substack. And, that'll be another medium that I have in order to share and express the message that I have. So I'm super excited about that because, as I said, it brings another degree or another modality of knowledge that I can share through writing articles. And so definitely encourage that. And it's an awesome way also to share some of my photography that I've had. Right now I haven't put too much, but I will be adding some of my photography in there as I find photography which definitely supports the articles that I'm writing. So what else do I have to say? I guess that's overall good for the announcements for today, because that's a lot of information, and I honestly would love if you come out and support me on Patreon and Substack and the other channels. I've for a long time had a channel on Telegram, and if you go down to the description of any of my videos, you will see that I have Telegram links to my Shone's Thoughts. And this is just a great place to get updates on, when I do something, from Patreon to Substack now to Rumble and a whole bunch of other initiatives that I'm working on. And it's a great way to get a quick amount of information if you're already on Telegram. Oh yeah, I've also recently launched my Instagram account. Now, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan when it comes to overall social media, but yet I'm, trying to reach as much of an audience as possible. There's certain platforms that I won't use, but yet I'm trying with the Instagram. The biggest reason why I did go over to Instagram was to support those content creators that are already on Instagram. And I truly do believe that if more people were to support other people that are like-minded to the greatest degree that we could, then the system that has limited sovereignty, it won't have the ability to hold back that tidal wave of sovereign minds that are looking to move forward. The wind is kicking up again. That's okay. And life has been quite challenging. So we'll go into a little bit of me essentially sharing, the experiences that I have. I spent 2 different sequences or sessions, I'll say, living on the river, the Chilliwack River, in an off-grid campsite. I spent my first 4 days soloing it. And then I did another sequence after that, another 5-day sequence of living off grid. And when I mean living off grid, I mean it was close to a highway that did have, a lot of people driving down it, but yet there was no Wi-Fi service, and there was no host to the campground. And often when I would stay there, most nights there weren't very many people around at all. There would be the occasional, fire nearby of another group of campers or single campers that were camping out there. But for the most part, it was me in the wilderness. By the time that dusk hit, when night fell, there was 0 lights because there were no traffic lights as well, or like street lamps or anything like that. So it was definitely moonlight to light the area, as overcasted would of course be a lot darker. And so I've had a lot of experience recently doing that, and I've come to understand that part of the reason why I was out there is that when we immerse ourselves in nature and we remove ourselves from, the world that has a lot of EMF interference, whether that's cell phones, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, the magnetic fields that are created by all the numerous electronic devices that we hold, when we eliminate that from our presence and we ground with nature, and we spend more time in nature, it's almost as if it helps us balance our energies. And through balancing our energies, I find that we can often re-engage the natural healing processes that our bodies have. And more importantly, oftentimes people will feel, distracted or irritated. And I found that oftentimes those irritations can come from an overabundance of electromagnetic radiation. And they call them EMF, the electromagnetic fields that differing things give us. And everything affects us. Even, the laughter of a child, for instance, affects us. We hear it. It's auditorial. But yet, even if we don't hear it, we don't hear the actual frequencies that are coming off. When you walk into a room and two lovers have been in love, then you can feel that. You can feel the positive force. But yet at the same time, when you've walked into a room where people have been arguing, even if they've stopped arguing, you can feel the tension in the room. And they often talk about, the tension in the room was so thick you could cut it like with a knife. So we have the understanding that these fields, these electric fields or frequencies, that they are there and we can feel them. But yet we can also feel them with all of the other devices. And what I found when I did that is I was a lot more calm. I was a lot more open and receptive to different energies that were perhaps beyond the electromagnetic frequencies. You could sometimes say connections to our intuition, connections to rebalancing our frequencies through grounding with nature, grounding with the earth. And I've often talked a lot about the importance of grounding. It will definitely be one of those larger conversations in my upcoming podcast series to do with the experiences and modalities that I've personally experienced. And that's another thing that we can do in those mentor coaching sessions is we can talk about your situation and what things you could do in order to help your own healing journey. Often I've talked about the healing journey is a participatory, experience that no one, in my opinion, heals us for us, that we have to take lead. We have to lead our own healing journey, and that's going to be something that we can also discuss. So if you're looking to find ways of healing and you want to talk to someone who has experienced a large amount of healing, and I have lots of stories, I highly encourage you, go on to my podcast. I have over 700 videos, and a lot of them have to do with healing. And healing can be done through so many different aspects, including learning how to let go and forgive. That can be a true master session of healing in itself. And so one of the ways that I've personally worked on my own healing was just immersing myself out in nature and overcoming fear of the unknown. And that's a huge healing one as well, is, a lot of people, they don't do things because they fear what could happen. And, oftentimes a lot of those things that could happen never happen. And then we've limited ourselves from all the potentials. You're in a club, or you're in a bar, or you're in a library, or you're walking down the street and you see someone that you're magnetically attracted to. And they may even glance over to you and smile. And then because of fear, you avoid that possibility. Actually, I have that potential right now. I was watching this YouTube channel, and the woman who's on that YouTube channel, I won't name names, but there was something magnetic about her. And, I normally would have resisted commenting. But yet this time I shared the energy and the attraction, not the attraction as in, sexual attraction, but the attraction as in there's something that resonates about the way that she's talking, the way that she's presenting the conversation she's having. And lo and behold, I found myself just commenting based on true connection and not, the thank you and the routine comments, actually just commenting as if I was conversating with her. And that's me, and expressing, in a sense, my ability to just be myself and comment the way that I would as if she was in front of me talking, rather than worrying about what other people might say. I once made a comment about how one of the content creators that I was watching, she was very attractive, and I just, blurted out, "You're very attractive." And then I had someone come back at me in the comments telling me that I was, being this way or that way, and essentially, I don't know, it was just a negative experience because I was just, being honest. I found her very attractive, but not in the way that I was trying to pick her up. I was just complimenting her. I think it was something to do with her smile. Like, there was a large, large smile. And the person who was criticizing me basically was insulting me for letting the person know how I felt. But yet I truly do believe authentic relationships and an authentic world that we could possibly live in would be able to tell people how you feel, not with the purpose of trying to get a date, but just with the purpose of being authentically yourself. That when people inspire you or they attract you, letting people know that is without the expectation of getting a date. That's an important part. But just being authentically you and being able to compliment people. I once created a possibilities about a new era of relationships, envisioning a world where, men could say to women that, you're pretty, without their husband getting all upset about it. Without people thinking that immediately, the woman's going to say, "Oh, I already have a husband." That's a limit that we put on ourselves. And if we could live in a world where people could authentically comment other people without the expectation either way from the receiver or the giver of that compliment, expecting anything. So I think I got lots off track there, but I feel there's a lot of powerful information, but more importantly, I want to swing back to join the community. Like, I'm coming to the point of wondering what more could I say or do to help expand what I'm looking here to create. And what I'm looking to here to create with all of my endeavors is a safe space for people who choose and want to live a better life, however that comes about. Whether it's, healing and sharing more smiles, or it's coming together physically in the world to do workshops in the future, or it's, just expanding our own ideas of what could be possible and then rippling that out to the world that is all around us. I really do foresee a much better world than the one that's being presented to us through all of the experiences that I see online, that I listen to in the news, that I experience with, other people in other communities where there's a lot of sharing the challenges that our worlds are going on, even in the social media. And, I truly do wish to bring together resonant people who want to be a part of a much better place for the majority to live in. There's a saying of the meek shall inherit the earth. Well, the meek aren't so meek. That's just the projection that they put on us. The meek are actually the powerful, and the meek would just represent the majority of the Homo sapiens that are on this planet. And in all actuality, at least in my way of thinking, we are inheriting the earth. The earth is coming back to the people who would choose to live in harmony with the earth, live in balance and love and compassion with one another, and create a world where everyone benefits from the contributions of everyone. and that together we live with Earth and not on Earth, if you know what I mean by that. So I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you so much. If you have made it this far, please allow the last two, like when you get to the end of the video, on any of my videos, they'll always have another video to click after that. Please click on those videos. Even if you don't have time to fully watch them, they'll save them in your history. But more importantly, it shows a great, and it shows like YouTube really appreciates it, or not appreciates it, that's the wrong word. But anyways, it helps the channel. Yeah, just go there. It helps the channel. It shows continuity. It shows connection. It shows engagement. That's the word I'm looking for. It's one of the greatest indicators of engagement is to click on the video that you'll see coming up in the last 30 seconds of this video or any of my other videos. So please, if you could do that, that would definitely help me. And yeah, stay tuned for a lot more, and come over to Patreon and, you know, share your energy in whatever way that you choose. And even if, like I said, you join as a free subscriber, go through all of the posts that I put on Patreon, show me some love there, but more importantly, comment. Once again, engagement is commenting, likes, sure, whatever, but the commenting part, and that's, or the clicking on future other things, that's also very powerful. So thank you so much, and so much love.